From the Black Sea to the Atlantic, from the Arctic polar circle to the shores of the Mediterranean, landscapes of extreme diversity. The plants and wildlife of Europe reflect this infinite variety. They are conditioned by multiple factors, such as climate, altitude, soil, environment.
" 60,000 different species of insects have been inventoried in Europe. Among them, 400 species of butterflies. A great majority of these species are threatened with extinction due to insecticides. This animal, ordinary yet exquisite, brings up the question of wildlife preservation in Europe. Not all have the charm of this one, the brimstone butterfly.
Vipers, or adders, are rather commonplace in Europe, although reptiles are relatively badly represented. Indeed, although the surface of Europe corresponds to 7% of the land mass of all the continents, it contains but 2% of all species of reptiles.
In all, there are about 1,000 species of vertebrates present on the European continent, some 200 freshwater fish, less than 50 amphibians, and slightly over 200 mammals. Birds are the most numerous, with 400 species.
The red-legged partridge we see here on a rocky island in Greece is sedentary and flies only reluctantly, whereas the Arctic tern observed in Iceland is a tireless migratory bird.
The large European bird family is incredibly varied, ranging from sparrows, who live around houses, to large waders, who live on houses.
Storks are almost domestic birds, not at all shy, easy to approach. In the past, when they returned from Africa in the spring, they would build their nests in trees. Now, a sign of changing times, they prefer to nest on houses, close to the fields and prairies which are so commonplace in this continent.
Although they are a protected species, the stork population is on the decline in Europe. This stork is hunting in a Polish prairie for insects, frogs, even birds or small mammals.
In fields and near homes, one can come across an animal which is very widespread in Europe, the fox. Foxes are mercilessly slaughtered for their fur and because they can transmit rabies. Foxes are often said to poach domestic hens and ducks, but in fact they hunt just about everywhere, in the forest as well as in ditches and on riverbanks. They most often feed on small mammals, insects, shellfish, and birds.
The dancing of little ringed plovers, the feeding of kingfishers and terns. These are scenes we can observe on the banks of several of Europe's large rivers. Beavers are a much rarer sight.
Beavers, once widespread in Europe, were also hunted ruthlessly on account of their precious fur and tasty flesh. At the turn of the century, beavers were all but extinct in Europe. It was therefore decided to try to protect them, and Canadian beavers were imported to interbreed with the local varieties. More recently, beavers were successfully reintroduced in Switzerland. But beaver populations remain very isolated and scant. Beavers chew willows, poplars, alders, birch, all trees which favor a humid environment.
Altogether, there are over 10,000 species of trees, flowers, and plants in Europe. We usually imagine the vegetation of wetlands to be limited to water lilies and reeds. In fact, swamps and marshlands contain a large diversity of plants which all have in common a capacity to thrive on the waterlogged substratum. An environment of abounding life. One distinguishes between plants that grow on water, in water, and on the banks. And European marshes present a rich variety of species in all three categories.
The surface of swamps is often infested with duckweed, a favorite food for ducks as the name indicates. Their rounded leaves are in fact flattened stems, from which hang long filaments that function as roots and float freely in the water.
Like duckweed, water chestnuts are sometimes free-floating and sometimes anchored to the bottom of swamps or ponds. They spread their leaves in a patchwork pattern that allows each plant to benefit from the best light. Emerging plants are even more decorative.
There are 3 varieties of water lilies represented in Europe, 2 yellow and 1 white. Everyone knows white water lilies, with their rounded heart-shaped leaves floating on the surface, and their bright white flowers which give off such a subtle perfume. At night, the flowers close, only to bloom in the daytime, if the sun shines. Although they don't secrete any nectar, they attract insects, which participate in their pollination. The leaves are coated in a sort of wax that stops them from getting wet in the water and keeps them on the surface. Yellow water lilies are also known as pond lilies. As opposed to the white variety, they have no petals. These are replaced by stamen.
Sagittaria, or arrowhead plants, are also commonplace, yet spectacular. In spring, very simple leaves that resemble blades of grass arise from the water. As they grow, they will take on extremely varied shapes.
When evoking the vegetation that borders swamps, reeds generally spring to mind. Reality, however, is more complex. These long stems that venture out into ponds are bulrushes.
These are reeds. They form a veritable sanctuary for birds. This plant has an incredible capacity for growth. It helps in the reclaiming of land from the swamp. Reeds reign as masters in any area they occupy and have difficulty in tolerating the presence of other plants. This plant, with its characteristic fir-tipped stem, is reed mace, more commonly known as cat's tail. It's a very elegant plant and is protected in Europe. Their names are burreed, forget-me-not, flowering rush, and they decorate the setting of the European wetlands.
One of the star performers here is undoubtedly the dragonfly. Dragonflies are absolute marvels of aeronautical technology. Their powerful muscles and 4 variable wings give them the capacity of vertical takeoff, hovering, even backward flight. If agrians indulge in acrobatic mating, it's for purely anatomical reasons. A tragic variation for this couple filmed in Romania, where love ends with a cannibalistic feast.
Box tortoises are one of the 2 species of tortoise that one can find in the European swamps. They're carnivorous tortoise, whose eyes are fitted with mobile lids. Their toothless mouths turn into horned beaks, which make good cutting instruments. Whereas tortoise are originally land animals, these have quite successfully adapted to life in the water.
Few mammals have actually chosen this environment as their habitat. The most common are, in fact, animals from North America, muskrats. In 1905, a dozen couples were imported and set loose in a pond near Prague. Since then, their descendants have colonized all of Europe.
Nowadays, due to relentless trapping, the European otter is all but absent in the swamps. Protective measures instated to save the last individuals are not sufficient, and surviving otters dwindle due to the destruction of their habitat, the wetlands, and to pollution of